Black girl spent her last $8 helping Hell's Angel. Next day, 100 bikers brought a life-changing gift. Sound cue, soft piano melody under a howling wind, distant engine idle. The air was cold enough to make breath visible. Each exhale a faint ghost beneath the gas station's flickering light. The cracked asphalt shimmered with oil rainbows and forgotten cigarette butts. At pump 4 stood Amara Johnson, 17 years old, skinny beneath a second-hand hoodie, clutching the final $8 she owned. She glanced at the vending machine humming by the wall, instant noodles, her dinner plan, and then saw him. A biker slumped beside a heavy Harley, his head bowed, boots spread on the wet concrete. His jacket bore the winged skull of the Hells Angels. To everyone else, that patch was a warning. To Amara, it was a question. Two strangers filling their tank noticed him, whispered, and drove off fast. The cashier inside pretended not to see. Sound cue, neon buzz, distant thunder. Amara's mother always said, "You can't feed the world, baby, but you can feed one soul." She looked at the crumpled bills in her palm. $8. Enough for noodles, barely. The man's hands trembled when he tried to light a cigarette. The flame flickered out twice. His breathing was rough, like gravel scraping a rusted pipe. Amara's fear tugged at her. Her conscience pulled harder. She walked inside the mini-mart. A bottle of water. A turkey sandwich. Total, $7.84. Her stomach twisted, knowing she'd skip another meal. But when she saw the biker again through the glass, his silhouette sagging in the red-blue neon, something inside her whispered, "Do it." Sound cue, door chime as she steps out. "Hey, sir," she said softly. The biker raised his head. His eyes, pale gray, bloodshot, studied her as if she were a ghost. She held out the water. "You look like you could use this." He didn't speak, just stared, then reached out with gloved hands that shook so hard she steadied the bottle for him. He drank, coughed, muttered, "Thank you." They sat in silence. The street hummed with distant traffic. Her fingers froze, but her heart felt strangely warm. Up close, she saw the years carved into his face, scars, dust, and sorrow. But behind the rough exterior there was a quiet ache, an old wound deeper than bone. After a while he tried to stand, nearly fell. Instinctively Amara caught his arm. "Easy," she said. He nodded once. Been a long ride. When he could finally speak, his voice was gravel and gratitude. "You didn't have to do that." Amara smiled faintly. "I know." She checked her cracked phone screen, 10:42 p.m., and realized her little brother Malik would be waiting. She left the remaining 16 cents on the curb, whispered, "Take care," and walked away into the night. The flicker of the gas station sign followed her down the empty street. For a fleeting second, she thought she heard the biker whisper something like a prayer. Sound cue, slow fade into gentle guitar strum. That night, as rain began to fall, Amara walked home hungry but with a sense of fullness she couldn't explain. Sometimes the smallest act, a sandwich, a bottle of water, a moment of kindness, becomes the spark that lights someone's forgotten fire. Amara didn't know it yet, but her $8 were about to buy something far greater than food. They were about to buy hope. From the concrete, the world looked sideways. The fluorescent hum of the gas station turned the night into a sickly sort of day. He could see his boots, scarred leather, laces dark with road grit, and the way the puddles kept collecting the neon and breaking it apart. He needed air, but each breath rasped like his lungs were lined with sand. She had come out of nowhere, the girl in the cracked hoodie with the careful eyes, and placed water in his hands like it was something holy. He'd meant to say more than thank you. He'd meant to tell her she'd just reached into a tunnel where men like him got lost and flicked on a light. But his tongue was heavy. His hands shook. The world pulsed too bright. He watched her walk away with that tiny, stubborn stride of someone who's learned to move forward even when forward hurts. He wasn't a praying man. Not anymore. But he whispered anyway, because some moments demand a witness. "Let her be kept," he said to no one. "Let her be lifted." Sound cue, rain patter grows. A motorcycle creaks as weight shifts. He closed his eyes and tried to sort the pain, not just the ache in the joints, the shoulder that never set right, the rib that still protested storms. No, beneath that deeper, a slow-burning emptiness he'd been feeding with miles and noise and the kind of silence men wear like armor. "Name's Cole," he used to say when he still offered names. Cole Mercer. Most of his brothers called him Cinder, because he had a way of coming back from fires that should have finished him. He wasn't sure it was a compliment. Tonight, the spark had gone out. Or nearly. He unscrewed the bottle cap the girl had steadied for him, drank until the first rush of water hit his stomach like a flare. The sandwich was dry. He ate it anyway. He could feel clarity trying to claw its way back. Cole wasn't dying. He knew dying. He'd watched it in cleaner rooms and uglier alleys. This was something simpler. Dehydration, a sugar crash, the hard wall a body hits after a night too long and a road too empty of reasons. He forced himself to count inhale, exhale, like the old medic had taught him years ago when the world still called him son and not sinner. When his head stopped swimming, he dug into the inner pocket of the jacket, past a folded photo with creases through faces he loved and lost, past a wrinkled chapel program from a funeral the world never heard about, past a coin the shape of a promise he'd almost broken last month, and found his phone, black screen. Dead. He laughed once, a rough sound that caused a cough to answer. The road marker he'd taken earlier said 23 miles to the meeting point. If he'd made it to the old truck stop where the brothers were gathering, the night would have ended with a bad cup of coffee and the soft relief of men who've known your darkness and didn't blink. Instead, it ended here, under the buzzing light, with a girl whose kindness cost her dinner. He felt shame wedge itself under his ribs and stay there. Not because he'd needed help, every man bleeds sometimes, but because the help had come from someone who couldn't afford to give it. Sound cue, neon buzz, intermittent. A distant siren fades past. He braced a hand against the Harley's cold tank and pushed himself upright. The world tilted, leveled, tilted again, then finally held steady enough for him to stand. His legs remembered. They always did. The old body had learned to carry more than it should. Cole swung a leg over the bike and sat. The seat had molded to him over years. Desert sun, river wind, ocean fog. He traced the edge of the patch on his chest absent-mindedly. People saw the skull and read danger. He knew the stories stitched behind it. Men who'd hauled strangers out of wrecks, patched up kids at roadside stops, paid rent quietly for widows who never knew the source. The worst of them made headlines. The best of them left no footprints. He reached for the small auxiliary battery pack wired into a saddlebag, thumbed a switch, followed the tiny red LED to life, and plugged the phone in. It blinked. He waited, letting the rain cool his face. A memory crawled up and sat beside him the way old dogs do. A different station, years ago. A different night, back when his beard was more black than gray, and his temper ran shorter than the wick of a firecracker. He'd broken down in New Mexico on a Sunday with nothing open for 100 miles. A church van had stopped. The driver, thin old man with smile lines deep enough to drown a river, didn't ask a single question. He handed Cole a thermos and a bag of oranges, then climbed under the bike like a mechanic born with a halo. No sermon, just help. The only thing he'd said when he finished was, "Pass it forward, son." Don't argue with the math of mercy. Cole had tried. He had. But some deaths stretch longer than roads. The phone booted. He swiped past a gaunt reflection, past a lock screen lit with a photo of a sunrise he'd taken somewhere in Wyoming to prove to himself morning still existed. 3 bars. He scrolled through his contacts until he found a simple word. Church. It wasn't a chapel. It was a group thread, the way the brothers kept one another stitched together over distance. He typed. Cinder, down, not dead. Mile marker 228 off State 14. Need a sweep. Cinder, met a kid tonight. Gave me her last money. Cinder, reminded me who we say we are. He hit send, then added a location pin in case the highway had muddled his sense of place. 3 dots pulsed immediately. Bear answered first, the kind of brother you call when you have to lift a car off a man or a memory off a heart. Bear, sit tight. You've got 10 out. Bear, what do you need? Cole looked at the empty sandwich wrapper in his fist and thought about needs like they were a ladder. Food was first. Warmth, breath. But he also thought about needs that stacked invisible. Dignity, chance, the clean cut of a new beginning. He typed again. Thumb slower now. Cinder, not for me. Cinder, for the kid. Cinder, name unknown. Hoodie, cracked phone, thin hands. Cinder, East Side apartments near the mill. Cinder, we're going to pass it forward. There was a longer pause this time. Cole could feel Bear reading between the lines, conjuring the girl in the hoodie as surely as if she stood in the circle with them. Another name popped up. Rook. Lean. Quiet. The kind of man who never said what he didn't mean. Rook. We've got pantry stock, backpacks, school kits. Rook. Charity fund sitting idle this quarter. Rook. Make it move? The charity. Road Mercy. Someone had called it the night they started. Beer bottles clinking like bells. Half the world would have laughed to know they kept a ledger, to see the brothers take their dues and skim a slice to put back into the places they passed through. No press, no plaques, just receipts and the hope that maybe the next time anyone saw the patch, they'd remember a bag of groceries and not a headline. Cole swallowed. He could feel the math adding up in his chest. He typed one more line. Cinder, she gave me $8. Cinder, let's see how far $8 can ride. Sound cue. A second engine approaches, slow and sure. Then another, then three. Headlights slid across the station's wet concrete. The first bike that rolled in wore Bear like a mountain with handlebars. He killed the engine, swung off the saddle, and stretched his shoulders like a man shrugging out of a bad dream. Looks like hell warmed over. Bear grunted. But his eyes were soft. Cole offered a ghost of a grin. Tell hell I want my deposit back. Behind Bear came Trix, pink streak in her hair, jacket patched with 1,000 miles of sky. She tossed Cole a protein bar, then a glare. You picked the worst places to nap. Cinder, didn't want to spoil the sheets, he said, biting into the bar, grateful for the immediate weight of it in his gut. Rook walked the perimeter, hands in pockets, eyes collecting facts. He was built like a question mark that already knew the answer. He peeled his gaze off the darkness and fixed it on Cole. What happened? Road happened, Cole said. And before the road, a string of days with more holes than cloth. Trix snorted. Translation, you forgot to eat, you're sugar-tanked, and you tried to tough it out because you're proud. Because I'm old, Cole countered. Proud came and went. Bear laughed, then clapped a heavy hand on Cole's shoulder, careful of the bad one. You pinged the line. That's what it's for. Now tell us about the kid. Cole did. He kept the story simple because the details he wanted to add would have broken something in his throat. He told them about the hoodie, the careful eyes, the bottle held steady between shaking hands. He told them about $8 turned into water and a dry sandwich. He told them about the way she walked away like someone who could not afford to stand still. Trix's jaw set. What's her name? Didn't ask, Cole said. Didn't feel like I should hang that kind of weight on her night. Rook nodded once, a small flicker. We can find her without it. Bear looked out at the highway. We riding now or at dawn? Cole pictured the apartment buildings east of the mill, blocky things with thin walls and thinner heat. He remembered the way the rain had started, soft but sure. He thought of a brother who used to say, some doors you knock at day, some you knock at morning when there's light to stand in. Dawn, Cole said, but we don't show up empty. Sound cue. Quiet bustle. Saddlebags open, zippers, clinks. A truck door closes in the distance. They went to work with the old rhythm, the choreography of people who've built a life out of making ready. Trix inventoried what they carried. Blankets sealed in plastic, emergency rations, first aid kits, a half-dozen small backpacks pre-packed with notebooks and pencils from the last school drive. Rook checked the auxiliary truck they'd brought up from the yard. Nothing fancy, but clean, fueled, with tie-downs ready for crates. Bear called Stubbs, the quartermaster, who answered from a room that sounded like a warehouse humming. Money moved with a few sentences, the way it does when trust has already done the paperwork. Road Mercy had a local grocery on retainer. By the time the call ended, crates were being loaded by a manager who didn't ask why 100 pounds of staples needed to be ready before sunrise. Cole stood in the rain and watched it happen. He didn't feel like a commander, or a penitent, or a hero. He felt like a man in a circle made of engines and intentions, and for the first time in weeks, the hollow in him filled with something that wasn't noise. Trix tossed him a dry thermal shirt from her saddlebag. Put this on before your lungs decide to write their will. He changed in the shadow of the truck door, modest like a boy, embarrassed like a man. The dry fabric felt like an apology his body accepted. Rook came back from the far corner of the lot, holding up 2 fingers. "Camera at the station," he said quietly. "If the owner's willing, we can pull a still, maybe catch where she came from." Cole shook his head. "No." He surprised himself with the quickness of it. "No filming her. Not unless it's to keep her safe. She didn't give for praise. We don't repay with a spotlight." Rook studied Cole's face for a long breath, then nodded again. "Understood." Bear leaned against the Harley, which looked like it wanted to headbutt the horizon. "You sure you can ride?" "I can ride," Cole said. It was the only thing he'd ever been sure of. They didn't move yet. They stood under the buzzing light with the rain turning to a fine mist. And in the quiet, he let the old memories keep their place without biting. People always ask men like Cole for their origin story as if a single scene could carry it. But lives like his don't break clean. They fray. A father who loved hard and left early. A son who broke his mother's favorite plate and then her hope. A woman who deserved better than the man who constantly promised he was almost better. A daughter whose face he kept folded in his pocket because the court said he couldn't keep it in his home. He'd done harm. Not with fists. He'd learned long ago that nothing ached longer than a slammed door, but with absence, neglect's slow poison. He hadn't set out to be a ghost. It just turned out to be easier than being a man. When the patch found him, he wasn't recruited. He wandered into a garage with a wrecked engine and a worse look in his eyes, and a woman with oil on her knuckles and a laugh like a crowbar said, "We fix things here." Bike's second. People if they let us. He had let them. Most days. Sound cue. Distant thunder rolls low, then dissolves. A clock ticks somewhere unseen. The hours between midnight and morning are the thinnest fabric a day can wear. Through them, the world feels honest. The road sheds its lies. The shops turn their faces inward. The trees settle. Even the sirens, when they come, sound like apologies. They use the hours well. Bear and Rook drove to the 24-hour grocery to intercept crates the manager was stacking with quiet hands. Trix and Cole hit an all-night pharmacy. She spoke to the clerk the way people talk to their neighbors and left with toiletries, heating pads, a pack of kid-friendly cough syrup, and a stack of refillable bus cards. On the way out, Cole paused at a row of cheap backpacks. A blue one with a bright yellow zipper caught his eye. He imagined a boy stuffing it with notebooks, a worn comic, the one pencil that always drew one shade darker than the rest. He bought it without a word. By the time they regrouped at the yard where the club stored its charity supplies, the sky to the east had turned the color of faded bruises. Cole took a mug of coffee from a new hand. Mouse, young enough to still believe he needed to prove he'd earned his place, old enough to know proof rarely satisfies the hunger it feeds. "Kid," Cole said, nodding at the mug in thanks. "We got rules for this run." Mouse straightened. "Yes, sir." "First rule, don't call me sir." Mouse grinned, then sobered. "What are the other ones?" "No patches and faces. No cameras. No speeches. We stand back unless we're invited in. We ask what's needed. We don't guess. We don't turn this into a story about us." Mouse nodded like he was etching the words into the metal of his own jacket. "And one more," Cole added, surprising himself. "We remember this started with $8 and a girl who didn't ask for a return. We keep it clean." Bear watched him quietly, and Cole could feel the old friend measuring, then approving, without applause. Sound cue. First birds, thin and brave. The hush before engines wake. A gray ribbon of dawn laid itself over the rooftops as they loaded the last crate. The truck rumbled soft and ready. The bikes lined up like a prayer nobody wanted to say out loud. Rain had thinned into the kind of mist that makes streetlights look like they're holding halos just above their heads. Cole climbed onto the Harley and found the engine with a touch. The sound rose through him, steady, not showy. His body answered with the small, private relief of wheels and direction. Trix pulled up beside him. "You got words for the line?" He shook his head. "Not sermons. Just reminders." "Your reminders do more than sermons," she said, and he could hear the grin tucked into it. He lifted his visor so the brothers could see his eyes. "You can hide a lot behind leather and chrome. Eyes tell the truth, whether you invite them to or not. This isn't charity," he said, just enough for the front row to hear and pass back. "This is repayment." He didn't explain the math. He didn't need to. Sound cue, a synchronized ignition, one engine, then three, then a low chorus that settles into a heartbeat. They rolled out slow. No flash, no pipe screaming. The city at that hour was a skeleton and a song. Street sweepers moved like ghosts, and the one bus that always ran early carried the same 3 riders who'd learned each other's names without ever exchanging them. Cole took them on the long way by habit, down to the river where frost still clung to the railing, across the bridge with the view nobody notices because it refuses to be dramatic, up the hill where the mill's stack cut the sky into 2 honest halves. He could feel the girl's $8 in his pocket like heat. He thought about the way she hadn't asked for his name, his patch, his story. She had looked at him and seen a human in need. It had been too long since he'd trusted that other people could see him that way. At a red light, Bear pulled up, boot down, voice low. "You okay?" Cole stared at the apartment blocks waiting ahead, their windows collecting the first hints of day. "I've been less okay and more okay," he said. "This feels like the center." Bear nodded. "Good place to stand." They rolled again, turned onto a street where the paint had given up in the middle, where the mailboxes leaned like tired shoulders, where a silver sedan had sat with a flat so long the grass had learned to grow around it. The engine note dipped as they slowed. Cole raised a hand without looking back, and the line behind him adjusted instinctively, fanning out, leaving space for quiet, for breath, for neighbors who might step outside with questions in their eyes. He could see it now, the squat building where morning came late and heat went early. The door where a little boy would be coaxed into a jacket 2 sizes too big. The window with a paper snowflake taped to the glass even though Autumn hadn't finished speaking. He killed the engine and let the sudden silence settle like snowfall. In that silence, the old ache inside him spoke one last time, soft as a child waking. "Don't make this about your redemption. Make it about hers. Remember," he said, visor up, voice even, to the men and women who'd chosen to stand with him in this thin hour. "We knock with our hearts first." They nodded one by one. Even Mouse, who'd forgotten he was supposed to pretend to be fearless. Cole stepped off the bike. The asphalt under his boots felt like sky-turned stone. He reached into the truck, lifted a crate, felt the pull in his shoulder, welcomed it like penance that finally had a purpose. The first door opened at the end of the hall, curtain flicking, a cautious face, a phone half raised like a shield and a lens. Cole didn't flinch, didn't pose, didn't preach. He simply met the gaze and gave the kind of nod that says, "We're here if you want us. We're gone if you don't." Behind him, the line of engines waited without rumbling, like a choir saving its chorus for when the words arrived. Inside the building, a small shape moved past the frosted glass of apartment 2B. A boy, probably, with a backpack that looked tired, a jacket with a zipper that stuck. Cole felt something unclench in his chest, hope or fear or both. He didn't try to name it. He raised his hand to knock. Sound cue, knuckles touch wood. A breath is held. A door latch begins to turn, cut to dawn's first full light spilling into the hallway. Sound cue, distant engines humming in sync. Soft drizzle against pavement, the low growl of thunder fading into morning. The door opened a fraction, enough for one cautious eye to peer through. Amara's hand still rested on the knob. She'd expected no one at this hour. Malik's small voice came from behind her, groggy, curious. "Who is it, Amma?" She didn't know how to answer. The hallway outside was filled with men and women dressed in leather and denim, their jackets glinting with metal and patches that once sent strangers hurrying away. But they weren't loud. They weren't menacing. They stood quietly, boots wet, eyes gentle, and at the front of them, the biker from last night, upright now, clean, steady. The same eyes that had looked so lost under neon were alive with something else entirely. He tipped his head in greeting, voice rough but warm. "Morning, kid." Camera direction. The shot widens, the rain-slick street behind them filled with rows of gleaming motorcycles parked like silent sentinels. Amara blinked. You're okay?" "Thanks to you," he said simply. Then stepped aside. From behind him a box was carried forward. Then another. And another. Malik gasped as he saw what was inside. Food, milk, fruit, blankets, even a backpack with cartoon patches. Neighbors peeked through cracked blinds. Someone whispered, "Hell's Angels." Another replied, "They're delivering groceries." Cole turned back toward Amara. "We owed you one." "You don't owe me anything," she said, shaking her head. He smiled at that. "Maybe. But debt's not what this is about." Sound cue. Light guitar theme begins. Soft, hopeful, threaded with distant engine idling. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a plain envelope. It was sealed, slightly weather-worn, stamped with a small silver insignia, Road Mercy Foundation. Amara hesitated, taking it as if it might vanish. Inside, she found a folded letter and a printed voucher. A full 2-year scholarship to the local community college, sponsored anonymously by a biker charity she'd never heard of. She looked up, eyes wide. This can't be real. Cole nodded toward the line of riders. Most of us don't get second chances. But when we do, we pass them on. You reminded me that mercy still rides the road. Malik ran forward, wrapping his arms around his sister's leg. Are they angels for real? Cole knelt, his knees cracking with the weight of years, and smiled at the boy. Maybe not the kind you read about. But we try. A few of the bikers chuckled softly. Someone muttered, "Amen to that." Sound cue. The steady hum of 100 engines starting in the distance, a chorus of metal and mercy. Cole stood again. We'll be on our way soon, but you ever need anything, you'll see that skull patch again. Don't be afraid of it next time. Amara looked around, tears cutting through the morning drizzle. Why me? I just bought a sandwich. Cole's reply was quiet but heavy with truth. Because sometimes a sandwich is the only proof that the world hasn't gone cold. And you gave that proof to a man who'd almost stopped believing. The crowd of neighbors grew. Some took pictures. Others waved awkwardly, unsure whether to cheer or hide. But Cole didn't care. The brothers and sisters of the road began unloading the last of the crates, stacking them neatly by the door. A woman from down the hall, old and worn from years of hard work, whispered, "Never thought I'd see the day those boys would be the good news." Cole overheard, turned slightly, and gave her a nod that said he understood the irony. Camera direction, slow pan. A street lined with bikes, riders standing still in the soft drizzle. Helmets tucked under arms, faces calm. When everything was done, Cole motioned for his crew. The engines rumbled to life again, low and respectful. Amara clutched the letter to her chest as Malik waved at the departing bikes. Cole lingered just long enough to say one more thing. Keep your head up. Amara, the world's bigger than the parts that hurt. Then, one by one, the riders rolled away, engines fading like thunder moving off into brighter skies, voiceover, deep, cinematic male tone mixed with gentle guitar. That morning, a quiet street on the east side of town became something holy. No sermons, no speeches, just proof that kindness once given doesn't die. It multiplies. And the girl who had $8 learned that her heart was worth 1,000 engines. Sound cue, soft news theme blending into acoustic guitar and city ambience, faint voices, phones buzzing, camera shutters. The video began as a blurry clip on a neighbor's phone. A teenage girl in a worn hoodie stood beside a man in a black leather jacket. Behind them, a row of roaring motorcycles, chrome dripping with rain. Boxes of food and school supplies, stacked neatly beside a crumbling apartment building. No one who recorded it that morning realized what they'd captured, a moment that would ignite a conversation across the country. By noon, the clip had spread to local Facebook groups with captions like, "When kindness rides back home," and "Not all angels have wings, some ride Harleys." By evening, national outlets had picked it up. And by nightfall, the whole world knew Amara Johnson, the 17-year-old who gave away her last $8 to a stranger the world told her to fear. Sound cue. Faint notification pings, radio chatter, overlapping newscaster voices. Reporters called it the gas station miracle. Comment sections overflowed, some cynical, most moved. People asked, would I have done the same? Teachers discussed it in classrooms. Parents showed it to their children at dinner tables. Amara's phone, once mostly silent, became a hive of messages. Old classmates she hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered her name. Local news vans parked outside their tiny apartment complex. Her mother came home from the diner still wearing her apron and nearly dropped her keys when she saw the crowd. "Baby." "What did you do?" she whispered. Amara could only smile, holding up the folded scholarship letter like a fragile secret finally allowed into the light. Sound cue, low rumble of engines beneath voiceover, respectful, steady, proud. While media painted the story in bright colors of redemption, the biker community quietly went to work. Clubs across the region, often rivals on the road, called truce long enough to contribute to road mercy. The underground fund the Angels had run for years, within days. Supply drives popped up in small towns. Ride for Amara stickers on windshields. Donation boxes in local bars and tattoo shops. Even chapters on the West Coast sent letters and packages marked with nothing but a single phrase. $8 strong. The Hells Angels, a name so often tied to chaos, had, for once, become a synonym for compassion. Cole, though, avoided cameras. He refused interviews. When a journalist caught up with him outside a diner, he simply said, "If you're going to write about her, make sure you spell her name right. She's the story. Not us." Then he walked away. Sound cue. Ambient crowd murmurs fading into piano melody. Church pastors, radio hosts, and online creators all joined the debate. Was this a one-in-a-million act, or proof that compassion can live where we least expect it? Social media turned Amara into both symbol and spark. Artists drew murals of her handing the sandwich to Cole. One quote trended worldwide. "You can't feed the world, but you can feed one soul." Amara Johnson. Yet the fame frightened her. When she walked through school halls, whispers followed. Some kind, some jealous, all curious. Her brother Malik, proud and wide-eyed, told his teachers, "My sister fed an angel." The class laughed, not cruelly, just amazed. At home, Amara still cooked noodles for dinner, still budgeted every dollar. But when she saw strangers holding the door open for one another, or the neighbor's kid bringing groceries for an elderly tenant, she knew something had shifted, maybe, she thought. This was what change looked like. Not loud, not instant, but steady. Spreading from one good heart to the next. A week later, a small envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note in rough script, shaky but sure. "Amara, that night you saw a man who'd stopped believing he deserved to be seen. You gave him water when the world gave him silence. You reminded an old soldier that mercy doesn't retire. Keep walking the road that scares you most. The brave always do." See, there was a folded photograph inside. A Polaroid of Cole and his brothers standing in front of a food bank, smiling awkwardly for the camera, jackets zipped against the wind. On the back, written in marker, "Road Mercy, Chapter Reborn." Amara tucked it beside her scholarship letter, between pages of her notebook. She didn't need to tell anyone. Some gifts were meant to stay quiet, just like the night that started it all. Sound cue, montage, news anchors, YouTube narrators, background music swelling to emotional crescendo. A teenager's small act of kindness turns into a nationwide movement. The Hells Angels surprise America with compassion. $8. One sandwich. Infinite impact. A documentary crew contacted her. She declined. Instead, she recorded a short video for social media, simple, raw, filmed from her phone. "I didn't help a biker," she said. "I helped a person. That's what my mom taught me." You don't need much to make a difference, just enough to care. The clip went viral again. And at the end of it, Amara added one more thing. "If you ever see someone who looks broken, remember, we're all just one meal, one moment, one mercy away from turning around." The comments flooded in, from bikers, truckers, waitresses, students, and strangers. Each one ending with the same phrase. "Ride kind far away, under a desert sky." Cole rode again, not as a wanderer, but as a man with direction. He'd taped a photograph to the inside of his windshield, Amara standing in the rain, handing him that sandwich. Every time the road grew long and the ghosts came whispering, he looked at that picture and smiled. He no longer rode to escape. He rode to deliver. The brothers joked that the old man had finally found religion. Only his church had two wheels and an open road. Cole didn't argue. He just answered, "Amen," and revved the throttle. Sound cue, soft choir under acoustic guitar, hopeful tone. Months passed. The scholarship came through. Amara began college that fall, majoring in social work. She started a small initiative called One Meal Forward, a youth-run outreach feeding homeless veterans every Sunday morning. Her first donor? The Road Mercy Foundation. And sometimes when the sun rose behind the city skyline, she'd hear the faint thunder of motorcycles heading down the highway. She'd step to her window, smile, and whisper, "Ride safe." Angels, sound cue, piano fades into cinematic swell, warm, emotional ending. What began as an $8 act of kindness became a storm of compassion that crossed every border of fear, race, and reputation. Amara didn't just save a man that night. She saved a piece of humanity we'd forgotten still existed. Because in the end, mercy doesn't wear colors, or patches, or titles. It just rides from one heart to another. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Biker's Hype for more real-life inspired biker stories about courage, compassion, and redemption on the open road. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were Amara that night?